Welcome to the Upshot, Ulti-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me on this Tuesday, February 20th, is Josh Mansfield. The All-Star Weekend wrapping up over the weekend as we got a first look at the new Olympus course and saw players out in the miserable rain playing disc golf. Boy, we got a lot to get to today. We're going to have Steve Hill on a little bit later to talk about the UDisc growth report that is dropping today and, kind of get a look at, like, where is disc golf right now and coming out of 2023, growing, shrinking. Like, we've kind of heard mixed bag of things from industry folks. So UDisc, of course, has probably the best catalog of data in the sport. We're also got, of course, talk about All-Star Weekend and also Jomez news and how things are going to look a little different in 2024. Josh, huge show.
Yeah, we got a lot to get to.
All right, so first foremost, we're not going to spend 45 minutes talking about the All-Star Weekend. We already did that. We did it in our Rapid React show. So if you want to hear us go long on All-Stars and the big stories, talking about the streaming and the production and the drone and all these things, we did a big show, almost an hour, for subscribers. So get yourself a subscription. Check it out. Today on the show, we're going to give you our top 3 takeaways, and then we're going to move on because we got a lot to do. So, Josh, I'll let you go first. What's your top takeaway from the All-Star Weekend?
Yeah. My number one, there was a lot of complaint about the broadcast, about the event, and I think a lot of it actually originates from the fact that the All-Star format needs a complete reworking. I think that the doubles and the singles are very difficult to follow. It's difficult to build proper narratives until the very end. And because of that, the broadcast suffers. It's difficult for commentators to provide insightful analysis. It's hard for commentators to follow the golf. There are points in the round when they would pop up scores, and Sexton said something akin to, I guess Ricky got a bogey somewhere. I'm not sure what happened. The problem there are problems with the commentary. Yes, there are problems with the graphics. But I think all of it originates from the fact that this is a very difficult to follow and cover format for the amount of camera and infrastructure that you would need. I think the All-Star event would greatly benefit from a complete rework of the formats of how it's played, and make it something that is a little bit more viewer-friendly for television and for the Disc Golf Network.
Is it just the case that All-Star things just suck? That they just like inevitably are bad? I think baseball has the best version of it, but I think it's because baseball has this element of like a pitcher is not going to go up there and just throw 60 miles an hour because they're just screwing around in the All-Star game. Like, they're going to throw their heater. Yeah. And they're going to try to strike the guy out, and the other guy's trying to hit a home run. You're right. Like, the natural kind of individual tiny level of competition makes that interesting. But the NBA All-Star game this past weekend was panned. I actually didn't watch it, but like,
neither.
It was a joke. They played no defense. They just jacked threes up from the 3-point or from half court.
Yeah.
So it sucks. The NFL, Pro Bowl is so bad that they basically got rid of the Pro Bowl.
Right. It's flag football now, Charlie.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, like, I think they just kind of suck in general. But what I'll say is this. I would rather them, like, disc golf has the opportunity to have it be somewhat interesting, but you can't put it on a championship level course. Mm-mm. You gotta make it more fun and lighthearted and easy. And, Tucson actually worked well for that part of it. And I would love to see it be a little bit less of a slog. And I know the rain made everything harder this year. But it shouldn't feel like we're watching a meaningless tournament. It should feel like we're watching an all-star event where, like, we have little vignettes about the players and, it's like goofy stuff. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's the distance in the putting competitions for me were the most fun part of the weekend.
Yes.
And the golf was actually pretty hard to watch.
Yep.
Okay. But there was golf played. And we did see things happening. And one thing we saw, and this is my number one takeaway, Holland Handley is ready for a monster 2024 season. Now, we've seen the glimpses from Holland, right? 2 years ago, she was on the podium at Worlds. It's not like she hasn't been already near the top. And of course, she wins Throw Pink last year. Now, people, I can hear the teeth gnashing in the background about hole 18, but like, okay, whatever. Like, did she get away with one there? Yes, but it's not like she didn't play amazing for 4 rounds.
And a playoff.
Right? She still had to win it in the playoff. So I think what we saw this weekend, both in the doubles and in the singles, is that Holland looked like the best player there. Now, obviously, no Kristen, no Paige for that matter. So it doesn't mean that she's suddenly going to be player of the year. But I do think that she is clearly going to be a challenger for that spot. For number one, can she get past Kristen? I certainly wouldn't bet on that. But I think that you're seeing a well-roundedness to her game and like quality decision-making, shot-making. Her eagle on the 9th hole in singles was amazing. You can, I think on her Instagram page, she has all of her shots kind of linked together. Just an absolute crush of a first drive. And so, yeah, I just think I've seen all the pieces from Holland this weekend that make me feel really confident about her ability to have a big year.
Completely agree, Charlie. And actually, my second takeaway I'm going to give you here, I'm going to give you the flip side of this. On the FPO side, I think there are really only 2 takeaways that we can get here. Holland's on the top end, Katrina Allen on the bottom. She played terrible in both singles and doubles. There was nothing that was going right for her. And the problem is, I don't want to put too much stock in this event. And for most players, I don't. But when someone like Katrina Allen, who struggled mightily at the end of last season, comes out and doesn't seem to have any improvement in any aspect of her game, I think that's really concerning. We've talked about, and you've mentioned multiple times, Charlie, that she has these slumps, and that's completely true. But it's the, I guess, completeness of her slump. She can't throw. Her upshots are still long. She misses the putts. Like, there's nothing in her game that is saving her right now, and it's why she finished significantly further than most of the field on there. I mean, Allie Smith carded a 9 on hole 9 and still finished ahead of Katrina Allen. And I mean, it was bad. It was a rough round for Katrina Allen.
There's no question. And you said at the end of last year, I mean, I think it's like really the entire second half. Because remember, she wins the preserve, and then it was like something snapped, and it was just that she had nothing. And this is obviously not an encouraging start to the year. If you want to look at it through, with a little bit of a glimmer of hope, you'd say, well, it was crummy out, it was raining, and she kind of threw in the towel. She didn't want to be out there, and so, it doesn't tell us what we're going to see this coming weekend at the Chess.com Invitational to start the year. I'm not sure I buy that, but that's what you could tell yourself.
I watched Ricky throw in the towel, where after a roll away, he just literally just tossed a disc without even thinking, pulled the first disc out of his bag, and he still only finished 4 strokes behind the leader. And Katrina Allen was it 16?
I think 17 strokes behind Holland.
17 strokes? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. All right, on the MPO side, takeaway number 2 for me. He didn't win like the whole thing. He didn't have the best score of the day, or like do anything in particular that was like, holy cow, unbelievable. But Ezra Robinson is here to stay as a top 20 player on tour. Am I ready to say top 10? Am I ready to say top 10? I might be ready to say top 10. I mean, this guy is showing you all of the signs that he is going to stick around at the top, right? I mean, now, obviously, you could argue he already did that last season. But you look, he's at a record high rating. Mm-hmm. He is higher rated than some of your favorite pros. He looked great in the doubles playing with his brother. He looked great in the singles.
Yep.
Now, I'm not going to try to over-extract from a rainy, crummy, difficult course experience during a meaningless all-star event, but I do think that I am changing my mental approach to Ezra Robinson, which last year was like, oh, interesting, like maybe he's going to have a few good weeks, to no, this guy's actually just one of the best players. So I'm ready for him to have a good year. I
want to give a quick reference. There are 10 players who are 1040 and above. That is it. Ezra Robinson is at 1037. He's only one rating point behind Cole Redolin and Kyle Klein. He's ahead of the likes of Joel Freeman, Anthony Barella, James Proctor, Alden Harris. Like
Barella and Proctor, would you ever put in your, if I just asked you,
right,
who is higher rated, Anthony Barella or Ezra Robinson? Like, would you even hesitate to say AB?
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought
and
Ezra Robinson...
You're an AB hater, and you still wouldn't hesitate.
Right? Oh, no. Ezra Robinson, I would have put in like the 1027 group, who also plays pretty well sometimes.
Right.
Like Aaron Gossage. No, he's legit.
He's knocking on the 1040 door. You might get there this year.
Yeah.
Well, what's your last takeaway, Josh?
Last takeaway. There was a couple people, Drew Gibson, for one, who said that this is why the event needed to stay in Tucson. I actually think that the All-Star event needs to stay local to the starting event of the tour every single year. It was a big change that I absolutely love for a couple reasons. Number one, you can bring in exhibition players for the skills competition. You don't get to see Ellie Midling throw in the FPO distance competition if you don't hold it in Florida, because there's no reason for her to travel just to go do a distance exhibition. Number two, the All-Star event, and when you look at All-Star events in other sports, right, it's, especially during the skills competition, it's like this big celebrity hype event, right? Like, think of the NBA dunk contest or the three-point shooting contest with Steph and Sabrina. You've got celebrities everywhere who are being a part of this. And I think you have an opportunity to continue to do that with the All-Star event when it's at the start of the tour. If you move it somewhere else, most of the pros aren't going to come. You're going, the amount of talent who do attend it is going to be significantly limited to beyond those who just play. And if you want to make this a true all-star event, it needs to be one that is fun and a part of the community. And the best way to do that, to have other players come and root and participate, you need to have it at the starting place. And what I would think would be fun is like, set up a bleachers stand before the distance competition and let other pros go sit at the like in the section of the person who they think is going to throw the furthest. Like, you have ways to incorporate other pros who are not playing and making it fun, but that needs to stay local. I think that was actually a really, really nice switch.
You can't really control the weather. Obviously, you're more likely to have dry weather in Tucson than you are in, north central Florida, but you can't blame them for having it be rainy this weekend. I'm on board with your take, but I don't want to see them play the same course they're playing for the start of the tour.
Agreed with that.
Nor do I want to see them play a really, really hard course.
Agreed.
It's not the right vibe.
Yeah.
Like, I think, what they should do? Go to Miami and play at some city park in Miami.
Yeah.
And
or
Miami
a beach
vibes and beach B-roll, and the players have some kind of beach thing, and I don't know,
yes.
Make it fun. Let's see them at the club. I want to see the players at the club on bottle service.
How about a beach ultimate game?
There you go.
Beach ultimate all-star game with
let's
disc
watch
golfers.
These disc golfers make fools of themselves playing ultimate.
Yes. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, I think for logistical reasons, they're going to keep it near the start of the tour, but
I hope so.
They need to rework this a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing. People are going to throw tomatoes at me. DGN 2.0 is fine. It's fine. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. Is it better? Yes, it actually is better.
Significantly.
People are losing their minds because they had problems with their Apple TV app. And I get it. Should these things have been fixed beforehand? Yes, they probably should have. There's no way they could have tested all of the apps on all of the platforms, and they should have fixed some of these issues. For instance, very annoying on my iPhone, can't swipe out of the app and have it keep playing. And if you swipe out of the app and you go back into it, you completely lose your place. It just resets you to the main menu. That's a bad bug. It should have been fixed. They gotta fix it. But for the most part, watching the actual disc golf on DGN was totally doable. Okay, I understand the limitation on my phone. If I want to watch it, I have to just leave it open. But I could pause. I could rewind. The desktop worked perfectly for me. Zero issues watching on my computer. And I can cast it to the screen if I want to. I understand why people are annoyed by the bugs and the problems, but people are acting as though this is some sort of disaster when in fact the delivery of the product worked pretty much exactly as you would expect, and they improved key things. Having pause, having rewind. Did you notice the commentator delay is gone? The commentator delay is gone. I feel like people are massively underappreciating this incredible improvement to what made watching the live disc golf very annoying. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, it was fine. And like, yes, there's problems that have to be fixed, but I am really not in the camp of like, it was some sort of disaster this weekend. And there were production problems. I hated the drone. It was annoying. But like, whatever. I feel like people are like, it's like people are coming in looking for something to be mad about.
Yeah.
When like they're ignoring all of these things that are better about it. And, I don't know what people expected. They expected suddenly to look like Netflix. It's fine.
And I think it's paired with the price increase, right?
But the price didn't increase unless you want to pay for the high plan. That's the other thing. People are so fraudulent about all of this.
I hear you. I know that. But I think, but you have to admit, online people are upset about the price.
I agree. I know.
That's the perception.
I see it.
So that's the perception that led to it. Plus, because of the rain and the broadcast itself not being good, like I think that it got lumped into a single product, right?
100%.
You have to splice out all of that, and then when you get to just the actual stream itself, I completely agree with you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. Jomez, and again, we have a lot more on all of this in our subscriber bonus segment, Inside the Circle, from over the weekend, which we did live in our Discord. You can join up for less than $4 a month at discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. We're going to be live again on Sunday night as we break down Chess.com Invitational, the starting tour event of the season. All right, Jomez. News coming out from the Pro Tour. Jomez, here's how I put it, Josh. They're waving the white flag on the chase card. So, as we know, we've seen increasingly that people are winning from the chase card. Mm-hmm. And there were multiple tournaments last year where Jomez kind of showed you the lead card, and who cared? Like, after the event, it was not the card to watch. The whole lead card is playing terrible, and all the action is on the chase card, and you kind of missed it all. So, what's happening? Well, they're doing the logical thing, which is that they are completely rethinking how they cover these tournaments with post-production. So the DGPT has worked hand in hand with Jomez, I'm quoting from the press release, with Jomez Pro to shift the post-production strategy away from putting all the focus on a single predetermined card of players who may or may not be relevant to the competition throughout the course of an entire round. This year, the focus will be on delivering a complete competition narrative that includes relevant action and movements up and down the leaderboard across the entire field. So, they're going to have more footage from the other cards. They're going to be adding it in, and they're going to be doing, again, FPO and MPO. So, Jomez Pro coverage is going to look more like condensed DGN than it is like single card shot by shot. Mm-hmm. Though I'm sure that will still be the bedrock of the round coverage. Big
change, because Jomez was running into some real problems where you weren't able to get the winner and capture the important. And it's so hard to build a narrative on irrelevant golf. And I think this is a nice change. I think especially given access to DGN's resources, staff, cameras, footage, the whole list. I think this is a great change. And I hope that this elevates Jomez's product in this, as they know, the era of parity.
So as a side note here, Josh, maybe I shouldn't say a side note. As a add-on, maybe you're thinking, well, what does this mean for chase card coverage? Well, Gatekeeper and Ace Run Pro, who did MPO and FPO chase card coverage respectively last year, are kind of stepping away. Mm-hmm. So Ace Run is, and again, I quote from the press release here, Ace Run Pro has decided to step away from publishing dedicated FPO chase card coverage, but is exploring opportunities to create other content at select events. The Gatekeeper team has also decided not to travel to each event this year, but they will continue publishing MPO chase card coverage using footage from DGN cameras. It will be released on the week following each event. So Ace Run's basically out. That's pretty language to say Ace Run's out. And then Gatekeeper is like, we're not going to grind on the road anymore, and like we'll edit this from home. But I think we're seeing, again, we're slowly getting down to what is the logical endpoint, which is that there's one post-production coverage platform. And in a way, it's kind of sad because these other companies like Gatekeeper and Ace Run and even to an extent GK Pro, GK is still doing skins and stuff. I'm sure they're going to still have content coming out, but it just feels like it's almost impossible for them to like be a real business doing YouTube coverage. And like maybe it always was, but now we're really seeing that come to the kind of the end point here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But I think it's in part because, well, number one, the shift to live coverage, if you think about it, people complain about how long live coverage is. But the time it would take to watch MPO lead, MPO chase, FPO lead, FPO chase on their own probably is not too far off.
Yeah, like, totally.
You're hitting probably close to 2 hours worth of golf if you are just watching those 2 to 2.5 hours of golf watching those 4 videos for each day.
I think more than that. Aren't most of the Jomez videos like 40 to 45 minutes for a 9?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you skip the little interview thing and this and that, like you could probably cut it down. I watched all 2x speed if I remember watching it.
Right. I'm same.
But
same.
Still, like you're talking about at least an hour around. Yeah. And if you want to watch all 4, I mean, I don't think anybody's actually doing that, but it would be a monster commitment.
So there's already like so much disc golf out there, and I think that live is just so much more conducive to being able to go and watch and step away for a minute and cook dinner while you're watching or make lunch and play board game while it's on the TV. It is conducive to having and consuming in a more casual format than sitting down and just watching that YouTube coverage where if you look away for 2 minutes, you've missed 2 holes. And that becomes difficult to me. And so I think just the way that we're consuming disc golf has changed. And so you're right that it's the logical endpoint. I don't think it's like the Pro Tour pushing Gatekeeper and Ace Run out, right? And I know there are people who have very like nostalgic feelings around Gatekeeper and they've been around for a long time. But I just think that the way we consume disc golf is changing. It's why Jomez is changing in this press release. It's why Jomez is a part of the Pro Tour now. And I think Disc Golf Network is it's the future of how people are going to continue to consume disc golf. I know you and I both, we're believers in the live coverage. And I just think that's
But I will say, and people are looking for reasons to be mad, it feels like sometimes across all things DGPT. But, this Jomez coverage should be better. Right? In theory, this is going to be a better way to consume the tournament coverage. And it is also going to remain free on YouTube. Now, there were some kind of like strange ways that this was phrased about it continuing to be free. Next day coverage. I think, I've seen some people talking about online, and I think it's definitely possible that we're eventually going to see this not be free next day. We're going to see it be free next week or free 4 days later or something like that as they try to shuffle people into getting a paid subscription. But that's not the case. And so if you are someone who's like, I hate watching live, you're not, if anything, your experience is being upgraded for at no cost to you.
Yeah. And
keep in mind, for those who are not aware, Jomez Pro is now owned by the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So this is all under one roof, and the Pro Tour is continuing to try to expand the top of the funnel and get people interested in disc golf online and watching on Jomez, and then maybe eventually they want to pay to watch the live, which has worked very well so far for them.
You highlight and hint like maybe next week coverage is available. The argument for Jomez and the argument why you keep Jomez free on YouTube is that it catches, as you said, with the top of the funnel, the new players, right? People who are, that's how they find the sport and the pro side of the sport is by Googling disc golf and they pull up Jomez videos. Those people don't need next day. Next week or next month is fine for them, right? They're finding it. And so
you think it's going to happen?
I completely think it's going to happen. I think you're going to have to wait at least until like Wednesday of the next week to catch Jomez, and then you get next day coverage uploaded to DGN under probably the standard subscription.
It feels like the logical endpoint. Speaking of that, right?
Honestly, shocked it didn't happen this year.
For now, it's still the same, and for a lot of people, this is their preferred method of consuming disc golf coverage. And it's gotten better because you're not going to be watching dull lead card only coverage when it's not called for. So yep. I think we'll see how it turns out in the final product, but I think this is going to be a big improvement, and it makes sense that this is how this is going. All right,
hey Charlie.
Yeah,
are you ready for the spoilers, haters, when Jomez doesn't get released till Wednesday?
There's always going to be spoilers haters, but I see a lot less of it these days.
Agreed.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, UDisc's Steve Hill, former host, of course, here on the Upshot, will join us to talk about the UDisc growth report in 2024. Stay with us. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Along with brand new all black Octothorpes available now and other colorways coming out over the course of the next month, Pound just announced their ambassador team for 2024. I'm not even going to go through the whole list. Go check out Pound's social media if you want to see it all, but you've got classic names like Nate Sexton, Jeremy Colling on there. How about Ezra Midling joining the crew? Garrett Gerthy. Lots of great pros, all sporting Pound bags this season. Get your own custom bag or one of the pros bags over at PoundDiscGolf.com. Joining us now on the Upshot is the marketing director at UDisc and, of course, former and founding Upshot co-host Steve Hill. Steve, welcome back to the program, my friend.
Hey guys, how are you? Good morning. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for getting up.
Always good to be back.
Thanks for getting up nice and early Pacific time.
We didn't used to record this early back in my time, Charlie.
Things change around here,
It's okay. It's all
kids good, and real jobs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I know. It's exciting, man. I think I was the only one with a kid back when we started this thing. So
that's true.
Good job. Congrats to you guys. It's exciting.
Thank you. So UDisc growth report dropping today. Very excited to get into it, but we can't have you on and not ask you about what's been going on with UDiscLive.
Sure.
And the changes over this off season. So, UDisc not coming back as the scores and stats platform for the Pro Tour or the PDGA majors, any of that stuff. This is all kind of played out already. We've all heard everybody talking about this. How would you assess what happened? Like, why do you think UDisc isn't back?
Oh, I mean, it's a host of reasons. Ultimately, we just couldn't come to an agreement that got everyone on the same page for how we should move forward for the season. I think some of it we got pretty far along in the process. I think we started trying to talk with the tour in June and got until about November or December before we were kind of told, hey, they're going to go in this other direction. So, ultimately we were a little disappointed because that did take a lot of time, that, could have maybe been spent in other places. But, ultimately, the tour as an independent operator is free to do what they want to do and see fit to get the tour going and keep within their means and do whatever they need to do. I think some of it, some of it could have been due to wanting to have more input, more say in things. Some of it, obviously, there's some of it makes a little more sense to have them more closely aligned with the PDGA. They're the official pro tour of the PDGA, right? That's been the thing for a couple years now. So, some of it was disappointing and some of it makes total sense.
One of the things that Jeff highlighted is that UDisc has never really released their API and kept the data as part of UDisc. Was there any discussion about making that change? It seems to be a big sticking point for the Pro Tour.
It's interesting. We actually, in our previous agreement, did have an API in there for certain elements, and the tour never took it upon themselves to provide us the specs and the requirements. Like, an API isn't just like, hey, give us an API. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be work with their developers, work with our developers. I don't even know if they had a developer up until recently. So I know that was a sticking point. And yeah, we didn't have a public API. Like, I know Charlie's been wanting an API. I know Johnny V over at Skip Ace has been asking for an API for an eternity. And ultimately that was something that just it was a tough trade-off, because a lot of times we were working, not a lot of times, every time we were working with the tour on 1 year agreements, year to year. And oftentimes coming down to the 11th hour of trying to get these things going. If we would have signed this agreement in October like we wanted to with them, that would have been the earliest we've ever had an agreement in place with them. Usually it was a week or two before the season. There's a reason that, was it last year or 2 years ago, that we didn't do All-Stars. And so we weren't always incentivized to do those other things that took a little more investment on our side. I know it would have been cool for fans. I know it would have been cool for you guys. But ultimately, we had to kind of make some of those trade-offs when we're looking at the year-to-year agreement and where the investment is. And that's kind of how the data side of thing goes too. You just built the platform. The tour paid a service fee, but it was pretty low every year. And so that's kind of where the data ownership took part. It's cool. It's good for them now that they're going to have a little more control and say in that. I think I know you guys have mentioned on the show, it's weird that a sports league wouldn't control its data. But this also isn't a one-to-one comp. It's not like the DGPT is the NFL or the Major League Baseball or anything. Those leagues invest millions, hundreds of millions in their stats platforms. And that wasn't the case here. So the data ownership component of that is why, UDisc was kind of taking on the risk, building the platform. And that was one of the, side effects, I guess, if you will.
So I feel like you're the best person on the planet to answer this question, which is what's going on? What happened with the PDGA and UDisc? Because Jeff came on here and he said that the Pro Tour basically wanted to renew with UDiscLive, but the PDGA wanted to have its majors under its own platform, PDGA Live control that we're seeing now roll out for everything. And UDisc didn't want to have a piecemeal, only have, the tour events, but not the majors. But the PDGA stuck to its guns and didn't want to give the majors. But this is not the first time we've seen conflict there. The PDGA and UDisc used to have an agreement where PDGA members would get free UDisc Pro access. That went away. And now we're seeing sort of more antagonism there. What happened? You used to work at the PDGA. Yeah. Now you work at UDisc. Why is this a contentious relationship, which doesn't seem like it should be?
Honestly, I really don't know. We did have a partnership with them that kind of dissolved when, it was we had upped our price back when for UDisc Pro, and we kind of went into some partnership talks with PDGA, and that fell apart, and that's fine. From there, I don't know. It was a little bit of a tricky relationship. We're not really sure why. We did make plenty of other overtures to try and team up with the PDGA. We offered a just a straight discount to PDGA members last year no questions asked. Not even like, hey, give us a fee or anything like that. And they said no thanks. And so ultimately we've just kind of been doing our thing. I think as far as the tour stuff goes, we've been working with Jeff for the last couple of seasons, basically since the majors started to get folded into the tour standings. We kind of do most of our stuff for those events with Jeff or with the separately with the owners of like USDGC and European Open. So those are separate conversation. I'm sure people who listen to the show understand the distinction. But yeah, so for this year, we were talking with the tour and, PDGA, Jeff kind of serving as a proxy, I guess, if you will. And he did let us know that, yeah, PDGA said, hey, they have this new platform that they want to roll out for their majors, and they don't want UDisc to do those. So that was notable in that it was like, hey, we don't want UDisc there. But the other part of it was that, yeah, we care a lot about the fan experience. That was really the main reason that we kept doing UDiscLive for so long, is we wanted fans to be having the best experience possible. We didn't want to ever like step away and leave them in a lurch without a reliable kind of like backup. And so keeping in that fan experience in mind, we just thought it'd be really just super annoying to have to go to like 2 different platforms for a couple of the majors and then UDiscLive for other ones. We just thought it'd be a really, I don't know, Josh, you mentioned the other day, the Fall All-Stars, you had like 4 tabs open, right? Like you don't want to do that for Worlds and U.S. Women's and stuff and Champions Cup and have.
But then like USDGC and European
and then USDGC and European. We and by the way, guys, we've done this before. It was in 2017, right. And so we wanted to keep the fan experience intact, and we wanted to keep moving forward. So ultimately, the outcome was PDGA is doing all of it, and that's fine because either way, the fans get to go to one place. We would have loved if it was UDisc, obviously. We were bummed that that's not an experience that people can get through the app now. But ultimately, the outcome is fans can still go to one place. They're still going to get stats. They're still going to get scores. So
okay, I have 2
follow-ups.
Everyone will move on. Do you think that UDisc is keeping people from getting PDGA memberships because you have things like league scoring through your system that doesn't really require any kind of PDGA involvement, and now you have ratings. Now they're not comparable direct 1-to-1 with PDGA ratings, but you have a rating system now for when people play rounds. Do you think those things are encroaching on PDGA territory in a way that they dislike?
I mean, that certainly could be. We don't see it like that. Like, we're not aiming to compete with them. We're kind of trying to build things for all disc golfers. And, there are certain tools out there that prior to UDisc putting out like a leagues platform and an events platform and things like that, you did have to be a PDGA member to use. And like, there's a lot of unsanctioned disc golf out there. There's a lot of fun tournaments. There's a lot of like chill, low-key leagues that don't necessarily require PDGA sanctioning, and we saw a need, we saw, I guess, a void in being able to provide that for people. I don't think it precludes anyone from getting a PDGA membership. We have plenty of people who get UDisc who are also PDGA members. I think if anything, my hope is that maybe with new leadership now, like we're really stoked that Doug Bierkus is the executive director there. Have worked with Doug for years, ever since he was back doing GBO, DDO, everything like that with Dynamic Disc. We have a great relationship with Doug, so we're really hoping that maybe this is kind of a chance to almost reset or whatever, because like we don't view it as like a competitive thing. We ultimately think that we could help be a funnel to get more PDGA members. There's a lot of people who use the UDisc app who are not PDGA members. A large majority of them are not. And so I think that could be a situation where, hey, you start out disc golf with UDisc, you get into it, and then eventually, if you want to compete and get in a sanctioned play, you can, and you go be a PDGA member. And then I guess if you don't, we have tools for people who want to do that too. So we're just trying to serve a part of the market that we really felt like wasn't being served.
I mean, it does
there's
seem
a lot
like
of people who don't have members.
some kind of agreement with PDGA where it's like in the app, in the UDisc, there's like a find a tournament button and you click it and then it has like a radius of tournaments around you in the next 6 weeks or whatever. And you can filter and whatnot. And you're pulling in from the PDGA API. And then it's like sign up to be a PDGA member. Like
we used to have that. It used to be linked in the app when we had the partnership with them and everything.
Is that right?
It was linked in the app.
I don't remember that, but yeah.
It's been a few years. Yeah.
But you said, and I just want to make sure because I think we glossed over it. You offered the PDGA so that PDGA members get discounts on UDisc with no sort of return to you guys, and they said no.
Correct.
Do you think they're going to build their own scoring app? Like, not
For
obviously they already
rounds.
have PDGA Live for tournaments. Do you think they're going to try to build essentially a UDisc competitor or expand PDGA Live into that?
I don't know. I mean, they certainly could. They have a good technology team, but I think ultimately it'll have to be as good or better than the free version of UDisc. So they could, I guess.
It all went downhill when UDisc poached you.
What's that?
It all went downhill when UDisc poached you.
UDisc poached me.
PDGA leadership was like, that's it.
There was no coaching. I promise. This is free will. No, I think
tampering.
I don't know if that would be the personally look and like I'm wearing UDisc stuff, right? But like personally, like I don't know if that would be the wisest use of their resources right now because there is UDisc and like people can use it and we've got all kinds of great stuff in it. You can find any course you want. You can do all kinds of other things. You can score your PDGA tournaments with it if you want to, even though, they probably don't want you. That's fine. Do people who have been using UDisc for years want to all of a sudden go over to a PDGA casual app and try and restart? I don't know. I wouldn't want to personally. That's like a lot of stuff to like harmonize. Whereas like maybe you just keep your score on UDisc for your PDGA tournament when you're not, because I mean everyone's got to keep score now anyway.
Maybe this is. I don't know if you're the right person to ask, but I'm going to ask you anyway because I want you to speculate. What do you think then is the end game for the PDGA? Why build? I mean, you have UDiscLive, you have UDisc events that could have easily just been the companion app of the PDGA that is used for all tournaments, like that people use. You have enormous amounts of course data. You had opportunities for PDGA members to gain. So what do you see as the end game for the PDGA?
I mean, I don't know. I think they want to serve their members, so I understand why they put their goals toward technology and things like that. And like, there is a sentiment of being able to have your own app, your own interface, put out your own messaging, things like that. Like there's an element of probably being able to like, just do with it what you want to. Whereas partnering sometimes makes that a little more difficult, can slow things down, red tape, et cetera, et cetera. But I think ultimately, look, competition is not a bad thing either. Like, do I think it would be the best thing if they did that? No, but like, we're pretty excited about what we have going on in the UDisc app otherwise, even beyond the competitive stuff. And like, that's the thing. I think like I don't mean to like overly harp on it, but it's there's a lot of like evidence in our growth report. Like there's a lot of disc golf out there that has nothing to do with competition. And
the vast majority is probably 80-20.
It's might be 90-10, honestly. Like, so there's a lot of disc golf to be served out there. And like, if PDGA wants to have the competitive, like high end, like go all in with DGPT and have the upper, cool. They can serve that population. And then we can focus on the more general everyday disc golfer, which is what we really have been trying to do. And ultimately, that's the nice upshot about coming out from It's I'm not trying to make it sound like, oh, we didn't want to work with the tour. We obviously wanted to work with the tour. We wouldn't have gone through long negotiations with them every year if we didn't want to. That being said, now that we are not working with the tour, we ultimately have a lot more bandwidth to put into the everyday app experience, and we're super pumped about that.
Last quick thing here, then I want to talk growth report.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen PDGAlive.com and the way that they displayed the statistics and things. What do you think about the icons? Look pretty familiar.
Hey, look, I think ultimately, I talked about it already, right? The fan experience. And if this is easier for fans to understand and have a smooth transition to, I don't think there was any need to reinvent the wheel. I think UDisc did a really good job for 8 seasons of like laying the groundwork and having that be the experience. I do have to give you guys a little bit. I have to give you guys a hard time on one small thing. I know you're really, really like super pumped about the exact putting distances, and you're like, why did UDisc never have that? We had that in 2016, and we got feedback from volunteers that it was just a pain. It was too difficult. Now, the nice part is 2016 was like ages ago for disc golf. We were still trying to train volunteers on what Circle 2 was and things like that. So like disc golf and awareness of what stats are in disc golf has come a long way. So this might be a decent time to re-up that. I do think like it's one thing to do this at All-Stars with like 12 players on the course at the time versus the full field. It's going to be a little trickier to get the full-blown exactitudes, but I hope they can. Like, I really hope like that ultimately all this stuff, like I'm not like blowing smoke here, like with PDGA and DGPT being able to like laser focus on this stuff, you can do all the granularity and all these extra stats and all the things that maybe like on year-to-year deals we weren't necessarily incentivized to do because we still had the everyday app to be looking for. So I think ultimately like the outcomes are going to be really good for fans. They're going to be really good for disc golfers everywhere. But I did just want to give you guys a small poke about the exact putting distance.
Hey, that's fair. I have one more follow-up before we go to growth report real quick.
All right.
I think I know the answer to this, or at least a general idea of what your answer is going to be. But what percentage, or an exact number if you want, of UDisc revenue came from UDiscLive deal with the Disc Golf Pro Tour?
I don't know if I can like actually say that, but we're going to be fine.
Okay.
It was pretty small.
Okay.
It was a smaller, the ratio of revenue to time spent and bandwidth was maybe not in line.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought your answer would roughly be.
And yeah, so I don't want people thinking, like, I know there's been a little bit of like speculation online through all this, like, oh gosh, UDisc this is going to be horrible for them. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be just fine.
All right. Well, the annual growth report came out today. Right now, it's happening. So this is always very, very interesting. I mean, you have probably the best set of data that we have. But PDGA memberships is a nice proxy for things, but you are really getting insight into the kind of that everyday non-PDGA player that nobody else really has. And so, obviously we're not going to try to cover every element of this growth report in the show today, but I want to start with this. Rounds scored on UDisc in millions. You see, and we'll put it up on YouTube, 2019, 4 million rounds. 2020, 12 million rounds. 2021, 19.3 million rounds. So like you see that growth, not only in the sport, but of course also in UDisc and knowledge of UDisc and
sure.
Market capture. But then that number was basically flat into 2022 before jumping again another 2.5 million this year in 2023. I guess my first question is, what does this chart tell you? That you're now at almost 22 million rounds scored for the year. How much of that is an impact of you making it free to do unlimited round scoring without requiring a subscription? Or how much of that do you think is growth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's probably both. I think it is still growth. We maybe weren't up quite as huge 21 to 22. It was pretty flat, right? And then we had the jump, but we only went to the free model in August. So that was a whole portion of the year where you still did, if you wanted to keep more than 10 scorecards, have to go UDisc Pro. So I'm sure we didn't crunch the numbers on how much of that maybe was the big distinction there, but I don't think that was the whole thing. I think people were playing more disc golf this year. And like you said, though, some of it's market share, some of it's playing more. Our league platform, that's where we're really looking. I know we've been talking about the tour, leagues is really where we're putting a lot of our emphasis on the competitive side, because it's kind of that bridge between the everyday player and the competitor. Our league platform has just been booming. I think we've doubled since 21 or something like that in terms of league events scored. So it's a combination of both. Of all those things. It's market share, it's growth, it's free, but I think ultimately it's still indicative of just general overall steady growth. We're not in the boom times anymore. I think everybody knows that, but I think there's been a little bit of doom and gloom that oh my gosh, things are bad or things are not growing. But all the data we have is showing that we're still growing. It's just at a more sustainable clip now.
So I wanted to highlight an area where it says, but wait, what about the recent notion expressed on some disc golf podcasts that disc golf activity and spending are down? We felt a little called out here, Steve. So you say 81% spent the same or more on equipment like bags, carts, and other accessories. 83% spent the same or more on discs. Let me ask you a question then on the characterization of this. The way I imagine this is that when you think of COVID, right, you got a lot of people who probably bought 1 to 5 discs, and those people probably stopped playing. And I think we're the most likely demographic that you were going to lose post-COVID. What do you think in terms of UDisc? Those to me don't feel like the UDisc respondents on the growth survey. So I guess my question then is, in terms of this 80% spent as much money in the sport, do you feel like that's a proper encapsulation of where the sport is at? Or do you think that just based on this survey, maybe it looks a little better than it actually is?
No, that's a really great question, actually. Basically so we did 2 surveys that we pulled things from for the report. One was in the app, and then one was via email. Now, the one in the app, obviously, that's going to be your hardcores and stuff, right? Those are the people who are coming on the app, they're playing disc golf and everything. That's maybe a little bit less representative. The economic stuff actually came from a survey via email that was spread out to a much more representative audience. Obviously, they were people with UDisc accounts, but we spread it out to number around various levels of rounds played, time spent with an account, things like that. We really did for that one want to make sure that we kind of got a more representative sample. And so that one we feel pretty confident about, that it being not necessarily just the hardcore people are saying, hey, 80% of disc golfers spent more. And look, this just says some disc golf podcasts and other forums. So it's not just... there's a lot of disc golf podcasts out there. I don't listen to any of them personally, but there are other forums too, And
this goes on to point out that, you basically make an argument about it's a supply and demand thing. There's more courses. There's way more places to buy Frisbees now. It doesn't really specifically say it, but companies have also expanded a great deal. Not only are there new disc manufacturers, but existing manufacturers, in many cases, doubled or tripled their capacity, started going 24-hour shifts, all these things. Yeah. So you have a lot more product out there. And so from we're still at a much higher base, but it doesn't look like endless growth anymore for manufacturers. Sure. And perhaps that's why we're seeing more of a sort of getting a pessimistic feel, even though actually things are really good. It's just that everybody's so much bigger than they were 4 years ago that now you're feeling the crunch maybe of having expanded so much.
Yeah, I think it's just indicative of like adjusting to what the new market is. You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing that like we're excited about from this report is that this does, like, that was kind of that was kind of our outlook on this report this year, was like we were trying to show that there's like a legitimate trend now and that this is kind of sustainable. Like, we're seeing courses continue to go in. We're seeing rounds scored continue to go up. We're seeing new people coming in. I think we had 200,000 more people use UDisc last year than the year before. So I think we're, it's not just the big spike anymore, which is fine. That wasn't realistic, right? We were never going to keep at that level. Like, we weren't going to keep doubling every year. That's not sustainable. It's not realistic.
Pickleball begs to differ.
Pickleball begs to differ. I got a bone to pick with pickleball forever. I know they're my nemesis, but no, I think that's kind of to your point. That's the reason why we do reports like this, is because like we do want disc golf to be like pickleball. And I know there's probably people out there be like, no, shrink the sport sort of thing. We don't mean it from like, we're not trying to do these reports to grow the sport and put more money in people's pockets. Like, we want there to be more courses for people to play. Like, we want there to be a disc golf course in every town, right? Like, that's kind of the goal. You go to every town across America and you can find a baseball field. You can find soccer fields. You can find a golf course, et cetera, et cetera. You can't do that with disc golf, right? And so that's kind of the lens that we look through with trying to like share this information and this reporting with the community every year, is that we really want people to be able to have a way to sell the sport a little more to people, to validate it, to show, hey, like, people are playing disc golf. You should put in this course here. There's benefits here. There's a lot of, people get a lot of recreation time out of it. It's not that expensive to put in a course. Like, it costs as much to put in a disc golf course as a pickleball court. And, maybe more space, right? But like, a lot more people can use a disc golf course at the same time. So just a lot of things like that we're trying to help other people, whether they're external and find this report, or they're within the sport and they want to share it with someone externally who's, they're trying to get buy-in from their city council, Josh, or they're, or they're trying to find some sponsors for their local event or stuff like that. That's kind of the goal with doing this, is we want to just be able to show, hey, like, yeah, disc golf's growing. It's more sustainable now. There's some long-term trends and outlooks that we can kind of rely on here. And it's worth putting your investment in the sport right now.
You got a stat in here. Short courses are being built at nearly twice the pace of 18-hole courses. So that's defined as 9 holes or fewer. And so new courses installed in 2023, 766 9 holes or fewer, 357 18 holes, 121 other. So what I would love to hear about this trend over time. Like, do you have this data going back? Are you seeing an increase in short course development, or has this been kind of the same pattern for a few years?
There is a little more of an increase. Like, we were just looking at kind of the cross sections on this. And like, it's kind of catching up to where the 9-hole courses are. I mean, obviously, like, this year they were double. I think last year they were about double as well. So we are seeing that it's just like a nice entry level way to get courses in the ground. And I mean, it makes sense, right? It's easier to fit 9 holes in a random piece of land or a small park, as a nice starting point. And like, I know you guys had Doug on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how, like, for every giant championship level Pro Tour course, we need a bunch of accessible 9-hole courses. And he's coming from the town in America that does that best, right? Like, Emporia has got the country club, and then you can go across the street to Hammond Park, and they've got this little 9-holer where people are warming up or just playing and having a great time because it's just fun and easy. And that's the thing. It's just about making it more accessible and just trying to get more courses in the ground, and, start with that 9-hole course, get a bunch of people playing there, and then there's more demand for an 18-hole course.
Anecdotally, I think that's just so true. We have 2 championship level courses, and you're never waiting on a tee box on those courses. But we have a 9-hole course that always packed during the summer, every night, and so our city put in another 9-hole because that was what was needed to alleviate the pressure of that course. So
love it.
Makes a ton of sense.
But then for the people like you who want to play the 18-hole course, it's there too.
Exactly.
So it's like a whole. It's like the farm system.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I want to talk a little bit. What are some of the things, because this report in and of itself is an answer to this question, but what are some of the other things that UDisc does to help people who are trying to get courses installed in their local municipality on school property, what have you?
Yeah, awesome. Obviously we put out the report every year. We also put out another report recently. It's called the Disc Golf Health Index. I should give a shout out to that because our data science team crushed that thing. It basically breaks down disc golf across the world based on availability, like how many courses there are, but not just raw number, but courses cross-referenced against population density. It's super cool. Availability, variety, which is just what types of courses you have: short courses, long courses, beginner friendly, etc., etc. And then the reverse of that, opportunity. So I'm sure we're beating it over people's heads all the time, but Charlie, New York City, no disc golf still. That's the big white whale of opportunity. So we do that kind of reporting, and then actually every month we send out 10,000 emails to course ambassadors. Basically, they're the people who are the stewards of courses on UDisc. They manage the layouts, they get everything set up nicely, make sure that when players go to the course, they have a really good experience. They know what position things are in. We send emails to them every month, and then also an annual recap showing them how many rounds were scored there, how far people are coming, what states and countries they're coming from, so they can basically package that kind of stuff up and take it to their local municipalities and say, hey, look, this is the impact our course is having. They use that. They can lobby for course upgrades, more courses, things like that. So we take a lot of pride in using the information that we have. I know it sounds silly, I'm just going to say, hey, go keep score on UDisc because we want you to use UDisc more. Yes, obviously. But by keeping score on UDisc, you're able to show and demonstrate to community leaders that your courses are being used and they're worth investing in. And so that's something that we really, it's one of our value sets is to use the information we have to keep helping the sport grow. And so, yeah, those are the things. Then obviously we get people emailing us just randomly being hey, I'm looking at putting a course in this area. Can you let me know how the courses are played in this area so I can compare them and things like that. So we help with all these kind of things, just trying to help people make the case for getting new stuff in their community.
I mean, there's some cool little nuggets in here. I mean, we can't go through all of it, but you mentioned Washington, D.C. adding 2 new disc golf courses in 2023, bringing its total to 3. And with that, the number of rounds, of course, again on UDisc, played is up 400% last year. That's amazing, right? I mean, I think this kind of data, especially for larger cities, is look at what is possible. This is a real thing. People really actually want to play disc golf. It's not just some goofy nonsense that, I think that's going to be the ongoing challenge. How do you convince somebody in New York City that we need to have a disc golf course? I mean, not only do you have to worry about where do you put it, but you have to convince people that it's safe to put it somewhere and that people will actually want to play.
Yep.
And
we know people want to play.
Right.
That's the thing. We know people want to play. It's cool. I know there's several groups working in New York City right now trying to get something. We've been in touch with them.
Yes, I just was put in touch with some folks who are making a serious effort there.
It's from what I hear, it's close. It's one of those fingers crossed things. Hopefully it gets over the finish line. Because I mean, just think about the capacity or not the capacity. Just think about the spark that could light for disc golf, right? New York City's, how many people live there, Charlie? It's 4 million?
8 million.
8 million. Not even close. Oh, I was thinking LA. That's, you get the right person who gets it hooked on disc golf there, and like, you never know what happens. And then it's more recreation for people. Like, it's just, we all love it. It's great. It's fun. So like, let's get more people doing it.
The other thing that I really liked on this report was kind of the highlight in terms of like courses by state, and you highlight the health index as well. It says 45 of 50 states saw the increase. And I think what's interesting to me, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, is why do some areas geographically seem to expand and grow at the rate that they do while others are not? And because I think also like relative to population, right? I mean, we're talking the increase in some of these, North Dakota's up 33%, Montana's up 27%. But why are states like Nevada and Maine and Louisiana going down? Can you talk a little bit about kind of that geographic dispersion, about why some areas are succeeding and thriving?
I don't know all of the reasoning for it, right? It's tricky to know. Thankfully, the states that did go down didn't really go down dramatically much. Hawaii had like 8% drop. I dove in a little bit deeper to see if any of that was really related to like the fires in Lahaina. I couldn't really draw a clear correlation or line between that.
Tourism was surely down, and
sure,
that probably means fewer disc golf rounds played. When I went to Hawaii, I played disc golf.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same. It was great.
It was great.
But, I think in some of it, like California, regulations here to get a course are tricky. Just the land in general to get is difficult. I don't know if that's the same for Nevada or Louisiana. Maine, hard to say. Maine has a lot of pay-to-play courses. That could potentially be a reason. But like, as far as the places that are growing, like, it's just really great to see that all these spots are going up. And like, North Dakota, Montana, not the most populous places, but like certainly plenty of land to put disc golf courses and to get more people hooked on the sport. And Midwest really continuing to thrive and do well. So it's just exciting to see that, like, yeah, people are still going out and playing. And I think the thing that I try and remember with all this is like, yeah, this is, when we say it in the report, this is just UDisc, right? Like we talked about earlier, there's a lot more disc golf than competitive stuff. There's also a lot more disc golf than what's being covered on UDisc. Like we had, we're pretty happy. We had 1.4 million people use the app last year, which is pretty incredible.
It's crazy.
But like, we still think that's like scratching the surface of what it could be. There's so many more people out there who are playing, who aren't necessarily like wanting to keep score per se. We're actually we have something in beta right now for those people. And
what is it, like vibes check?
Kind of. It kind of is. Yeah. No, it's awesome. Like, I know you guys are laughing because you're like the guys who are like the competitive guys, but like there's plenty of times where you want to go out and play disc golf and like not keep a score, right? Like, at least me, I don't know.
Okay, but what do you put in the app then?
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's
How strong is my weed today?
No, it's not that. We don't have that kind of technology yet. But
Charlie, we're breaking that image. Come on, man.
Hey, let's acknowledge that it's still a big part of the sport.
No, it's thank you guys for letting me talk about this, because this will be out. It's in beta right now, and it'll be out in the regular app in like a week or two. The concept is called an activity round, and basically you turn off scoring, but it's everything else UDisc still. You can navigate with the map. You get like your step counts, your time on the course, elevation, things like that. So it essentially turns it into a workout app for disc golf. And like we've heard from a lot of people that, especially new players, keeping score in the beginning like can be very demoralizing and stress you out almost, right? And so there's a stat here in the report. We have the 1.4 million people who use the app. 790,000 people kept a score. So that means almost 45% of people came to the app, didn't keep score, which means like we're pretty sure they're coming to the app and like, you know, that means they're looking for courses. They're probably still going to the course and playing, but they just don't have an interest in keeping score. And so we're trying to do something to kind of like make the tent a little bigger, right? We're really excited about this because it can be like, you know, for hardcore players, it could be a way to bring along someone new, right? I'm sure you guys have played with someone new before, and after like the fourth or fifth hole of being like, hey, was that a 6 again?
A 6, try a 10.
It feels kind of bad, right? So we think it can be a way to bring along new players. For hardcore people, it could even be the people who just like don't want to go out and keep score that day, or like you're going and throwing multiples, getting ready for a tournament, or maybe your game just went off the rails and you start tilting after hole 3 and you don't want to keep score. Switch to an activity mode, man. It's all chill and still everything you want to do.
Vibes mode.
It's great.
Cool. I'll be curious to see the next year's growth report how many people use this.
It's going to be interesting. Like I think it's going to be fun. Like I know for some people there's going to be like the hardcore competitive people who are like, I'm never going to use that. We've got some people on our own team who won't use it, right? We also have people on our team who are going to only use it. And so it's a thing where we want to try and just make disc golf more accessible, more inclusive. And then, you know, the cool thing is like, if you're the kind of person who's coming into UDisc right now, going to look for courses, but not keeping score, up until now, you didn't have a record then of like your course that you play. You could go in and you could like manually mark that you played a course, but that's kind of annoying, right? So you didn't have a record of your rounds, the number of rounds you played, the courses you've played, all this kind of stuff. Like if you go now and you're just an activity round player, you get all that. You can keep track of the courses you play, the number of rounds. Even if you're like a streak-driven person, I don't know if either of you guys have the streak going right now in the app. Like activity round will keep the streak going. So there's some really good benefits for people who either normally keep score and just want to take a break, or people who don't want to keep score at all and still like get some credit essentially for playing. So we're hoping it's going to kind of continue to help tick up the growth and maybe capture some more rounds scored this year, or not rounds scored, rounds played, right? Got to change the terminology.
I can't tell you how many times, I would say probably 75% of my rounds are after work. My wife is walking the dogs and I am not keeping score because that's not why I'm there. I'm there to go on a walk and have a good time in the park, and I don't keep score. I'm thrilled about this feature. Actually, I think it's great because it gets to keep track. It gets to keep track of, you know, my steps, how often I'm playing. Those statistics are like, I've never looked at my UDisc Wrapped because it's never anywhere close for me because
you're not the only one. Like there's so many people who you go on Reddit at the end of the year for the replay. They're like, yeah, I scored 120 rounds. That doesn't count 50 rounds I played at my home course, right? And so it's like, and I know it's going to take a little bit of time for people to like think about that portion of it of like, oh, I'm at my home course. Why do I really need to like do this activity round thing? A, it helps for the completionists. Like Josh, I'm sure you'll like to see that you played X number more rounds. But B, it kind of relates back to what we were talking about earlier with how we use the information that we're gathering to help communities, right? Like if course ambassadors now get even more accurate information because people who didn't normally keep score might actually just track an activity round instead, those people are still playing. They're still going to the course. They're still occupying that space. And we're hoping that those numbers, again, will help like just further cement that like, hey, people are using the course. Hey, city, can I please have new tee pads? Or can we get some benches here? Or hey, there's that nice piece of land over there. And you know what? A lot of people are using this course. They'd probably use another one too. So we're really hopeful from the course ambassador perspective that like this can really help continue to tell that story.
I certainly know a big part of this growth report is not just to report the data, but to sell disc golf and be an opportunity for positive PR for giving to local decision makers and things like that. Are there things that you're seeing in the data that you do feel a little concerned about in some way, or do you think this is just an ongoing positive story and that disc golf is just doing great?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's good to have some perspective, right? Like, we're not necessarily growing at the clip that we were a couple years ago. The number of courses like per day, if you average it out, is down a little bit over the last couple years. That being said, I don't think we're really concerned per se. I think this just makes things a little more. It just makes it more sustainable. It makes it easier to kind of flow with, right? Like, it'll make things easier to forecast, easier to plan if we're a little more sustainable now. So we're not really like concerned. We're actually really excited. I guess, the fact that pickleball has got like 5 times the number of courts that we do courses in the US is kind of annoying. But that's a personal thing.
Well, yeah, but the other thing you think about, right, is like you can put in the space of 4 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts.
Sure.
It's tucked in the corner, right? It's like that makes their lives.
But how much does that cost? I guess if they're tennis courts and you just convert them, right? But like new ones.
Our city just put in new pickleball courts and they are.
I'm sure you did. Look,
we put in a disc golf course too. Don't come at me like that.
No, that's great. I love it. No, and this is one of those things we put in our health index report is like pickleballers show up, dude. Like, they get organized. They go out and they lobby their cities.
Yep.
And they show up at meetings and like put on a good face. And some of that's the demographics, right? They maybe have a little more time on their hands to get organized and do those things.
Number one hater right here, Steve Hill. Number one pickleball hater. There's gonna be a horse head on your doorstep soon.
I'm not a hater. I would love to get the amount of PR that they did for disc golf. But no, I think they do a really good job of organizing and getting behind what they want. And like, I think disc golfers could learn from that a little bit. A lot of times in a lot of communities, I've seen it here, and I'm as guilty of it. Like, I don't necessarily go out and lobby my city for courses. So, pot calling the kettle black, or being a little bit of a hypocrite, but like around here it's 1 or 2 people who really do a lot of the organizing and lobbying, and I think that's similar in a lot of places. And so hopefully disc golfers can use information like this and try and just get a little more organized and go out and support their communities and get more courses that way. I love pickleball. It's the best. Big ping pong. Who says no?
That's why it's fun and people pick it up. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Very, very interesting as always. And I think a good counter narrative to the idea that we've seen like decline.
I'm waiting for the good vibes on the next episode of Upshot now. No more doom and gloom.
One of my predictions this year is that we're going to see continued positive growth in disc golf. So
I like it.
Yeah, I'm countering the negativity bias. Anyway, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on. And
thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Hope to talk to you again soon.
Likewise. Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Steve Hill from UDisc here with us on the Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upshot. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We were going to do our draft today, our fantasy draft, but a big confluence of things happened that we didn't have time for. We don't even have time. I mean, the show's already over an hour long, so like, let's just call it a day. So we will do it on Thursday. Guaranteed, promise, 100%. I'm not sure who our drafter guests are going to be, but we're going to find at least one person to join us. And Josh, we do need to address it, and maybe we should talk about it real quick right now.
Okay.
Last year, obviously, Kristen was the number 1 overall pick. She was so obviously the number 1 pick, wasn't even close. And then she proceeded to just completely break everything and just dominate all the categories. Do we need to do anything about that? Do we need to change our scoring or our draft approach? I've heard of some drafts, they just have straight up excluded Kristen in some people's fantasies. Because it's just like she's too good.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Here's my proposal. Pro Tour allows you to take a certain number of events, and after that, you no longer score for the Pro Tour Championship. I don't think there's any reason we couldn't do the same thing for fantasy, where you cap it at, say, you can only get 3 wins from any one player. That way, if, Ricky or somebody or, Calvin or Gannon pop off and manage to pull 5 wins, you only get 3. It puts a more of an emphasis on a deeper bench, and limits the top end capacity from any one player. That was my initial thought when I've been brainstorming how we fix the Kristen situation.
All right. Well, I like the concept. I think it needs to be a little more than 3, because I do think you should get rewarded for picking players who have a great season.
Sure.
But I like the idea. So we will come up with our final set of rules and break it all down on the Thursday show. We also may have some surprise guests. And of course, we're going to preview the chess.com Invitational as we get ready to go for 2024 competitive disc golf. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. And we'll talk to you Thursday right here on the Upshot.